Hi, how are you?
I'm in now.
You're in now. We got everybody's joining in, and everyone's pretty excited. So, if it's okay with you, let's just jump into it.
Why don't we do it?
So this is currently called Dollar Sign on the Muscle. We had Andy Martino on, and we let our guests name the show. So that's currently the name of the show. I'm Jesse from Business Lunch Productions, and you are Bobby Valentine. We do these every Monday and Thursday. You're currently the athletic director at Sacred Heart University, the executive director of athletics in Connecticut, former manager of the Mets, Texas Rangers, Boston Red Sox, Chivas Marines. You've been an on-air personality for ESPN. You appear on SNY. Bobby V, how would you introduce yourself, and what's your relationship with Scouts?
Yeah, I guess here's Bobby V's the best way to introduce myself. And, the New York Scouts are the New York Scouts. They take care of all of baseball. They find those diamonds in the rough. They look at players and get to understand what they're seeing and project their abilities.
Absolutely right. So the fun part first, we're currently called Dollar Sign on the Muscle. There's a company that helps to rename minor league teams. So we've got the Norfolk Tides, the Ogden Raptors, Charleston River Dogs. I think you played in all those cities. What should we call the show, Bobby V?
This show right here, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure even why I'm on this show. But I guess I was asked to do something for the New York Scouts, and because there's so many guys involved in that organization who have been in baseball for so long, I said let's do it. So I don't really know about your show, to tell you the truth, Jess.
Well, why don't we called it, Gary Perone called it Scouting for Diamonds or something like that, the Hot Stovers. So maybe we'll go with Gary Perone's show title again. What do you say?
Well, Gary's a good friend. He's a good guy. He runs the Brooklyn Cyclones baseball club. He's not doing much of that this year because, there's so many cancellations and delays, and hopefully that half season of Cyclone baseball will be alive and well, and Gary will be out there doing what he does best, promoting the game of baseball.
We certainly do hope so. So as far as your career goes, you're from Connecticut. You spent time in Texas, you spent time in LA, Japan, elsewhere, and then you always seem to keep coming back to Stamford, Connecticut in one way or another, your original home. Why is that?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. It's home. This is where family and friends are. This is where I grew up. This is where so many people were good to me while I was going up the ladder. And now that, I got as far up the ladder, I guess, as I'm going to get, I like to take care of all of those people who took care of me.
How did the position that you're currently in come about in the first place?
Well, I was asked if I wanted to venture into a new world, the world of college sports. And I said I didn't know. And the president of Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut said, why don't you give it a try? And that was over 7 years ago. I gave it a try. I liked it. We've been very successful. We have 32 Division I sports teams, over 900 athletes. We excel in community service. We excel on the field by winning championships, and our GPA, cumulative GPA this year was 3.32 going into finals today, and today we're final classes. So we have just a great thing going at Sacred Heart University.
So there's something that's been, I guess, coming up a lot as far as student athletes go, is the seniors, they're kind of missing out on their opportunities to have the full experience. We've talked about it with a couple of other people. What are you telling them? Have you been talking to some of the students?
Well, it's the spring sports that got canceled. So indeed, seniors didn't get a chance to play their senior year. Freshmen didn't get a chance to play their freshman year. And sophomores and juniors got to play the first 2 years or 3 years of their career. But, this season was canceled. So seniors are given the opportunity to come back and play next year. have another year of eligibility if, in fact, they get into a graduate program at the school of their that they were in, and then we can expand our rosters and have and those who want to come back who don't really have a job planned for them right now because jobs are hard to come by. A lot of them are getting their masters, and there's no better place to do it than Sacred Heart. And our baseball team excels. Nick Rispino and Wade Mazzoni are our head coach and our assistant head coach at Sacred Heart. Just do a great job, and the students love being baseball players at Sacred Heart. So hopefully we'll get over this, extra year. We'll get over this corona virus and get back to playing baseball at all levels again.
Absolutely. We have someone, it looks like, watching from Japan, and somebody else wants to know, we have a lot of kids who jump in on the scout shows here. So we've got someone who wants to know what advice you'd give to a high school kid who wants to play in college.
Well, you have to start early. You have to get out in front of those college coaches. And, prior to this year, there were summer camps that you could go to. There were showcases that you could excel at. And we don't know if any of that's going to be available to that high school student who's trying to get in front of a college coach. So what you have to do is get a real good video. It has to not only show the coach who you are and what you do, but it's got to somehow allow that coach to compare you to other players who are out there. And the best way to do that is to get your metrics, to get your velocities, your distance, your pop times, your bat speed, and all those things that can be measured against other college baseball players, so that the coach knows you by not meeting you, but seeing you on video.
That's really awesome. That's great advice. Before we're going to get to your college in a minute, but you have so many great stories. If for everyone that was at the Scouts dinner, you told the one about meeting Nolan Ryan, it's amazing as you look more and more into your life, who you've interacted with. And so let's just start with, at 13 years old, you won a national dance contest in Miami Beach. You were designated national waltz champion. How did that come about?
Yeah, you said that you were going to ask that question. You didn't get my footnotes. Actually, I won a national ballroom dance championship in Miami when I was 14, and it was an all-around dance championship. The waltz happened to be something I did at the New York World's Fair at the New York Pavilion. Really? I got to, do the Viennese waltz with a group of other dancers, and we opened up the New York World's Fair New York Pavilion, which was really cool. So I took dance lessons from the time I was 11. I got a steady partner when I was 13. We excelled down through New York, the Waldorf Astoria, the Edison Hotel, many of the great hotels in New York. Happened to win the regional championship at the Waldorf Astoria, to go to the international championships at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami, Florida, and was lucky enough to get my number pulled there too. So that was a glorious experience for a teenager, a high schooler from Stamford, Connecticut, that took dance lessons in the hall of the Belltown Firehouse, and practiced in my partner's basement about 5 times a week.
Are you still dancing?
Well, whenever I find a partner who knows what they're doing and the music's right, I love to dance. Yeah.
So you went on, you played college football with O.J. Simpson. Before that, you were coached by now Islanders GM and EVP Lou Lamoriello in baseball. You were scouted by Tommy Lasorda. Do you ever feel kind of like Forrest Gump with all the experiences?
Yeah, you almost had all that right too, Jess, for whatever that's worth. I tried to tell you, I never played in college. I was going to replace O.J. Simpson at USC. John McKay at least said that when he offered me a scholarship to play football there. Tommy Lasorda didn't scout me, but I played for Tommy Lasorda in the minor leagues at Ogden, Utah, Spokane, Washington, Caracas, Venezuela, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. Tommy's a dear friend of mine. Lou Lamorello was a coach of mine in the Cape Cod League when I was a high school player. He invited me to go up and play for his team in South Yarmouth, and luckily I did well, and he was a great coach and a great mentor and bragged about me to all these scouts, and because of that I was drafted as a professional player.
When you were drafted, that was 68. You were drafted in the first round.
Yes.
Got that one right. Soon after that, from what I saw, you were on the dating game. And I read somewhere you were on the dating game a couple of times. Is that true?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I lost the afternoon game, but I played such a good game. So they said. They invited me back to the nighttime show. There was a daytime show that went, I think, and like Monday and Tuesday, and a nighttime show on Thursday and Friday. And yeah, I happened to win the nighttime show and lost the daytime show. So that was a good thing. The daytime show trips were not very expensive. They were like to Disneyland, and I lost the trip to the Laguna Beach, California. I was in Los Angeles, California. That was a trip of about 40 minutes away, and I won a trip to Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague, and that was a little more than 40 minutes away.
And then you ended up passing that up, right? You passed up the trip?
Wow, yeah. I don't know where that's been printed, but that's good research, Jess. Yeah. Spring training was right around the corner for when the game aired, and you had to take the trip within 6 months, and my season was going to go until that timeline expired. So I let the girl's boyfriend go with her, and they lived happily ever after. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, I mean, it is amazing. You've been in all over the country. There's a lot of old newspapers. So in February 1970, in 3 papers, I saw one from Pennsylvania, Illinois, California. It says you ate 140 pancakes. And then I saw another one that said you ate 120 pancakes. So there was a discrepancy there. Tell us about that experience too.
Wow, the internet's amazing, isn't it, Jess?
It is.
I really think it's amazing. Well, you know, when I was a freshman in college, that would be 1969, the International House of Pancakes had a national contest that they ran to see who can eat the most pancakes, and it was a co-ed thing. And it was advertised in most of the universities around the country. That's why there was a lot of print in different papers around the country. And when I saw the ad at USC, I went to the homecoming queen. I mean, not the homecoming queen, but the queen of Sigma Chi, who was the president's girlfriend, president of the fraternity's girlfriend. And I had seen her eat a few times, and she could really eat. She was one of the most beautiful little blonde girls I've ever seen, but she had a cavernous stomach. And I said, why don't we enter? And we entered. And so kind of both of those newspaper clippings are correct, because we ate 140 pancakes in 30 minutes, and I ate 120 of them. And
that's unbelievable.
She ate the other 20. Yeah.
That's called supporting the team.
Yeah, she did it. She did a good job. 20 pancakes is a lot for a young girl. And, you know, the funny thing is it appeared in the LA Times, and the general manager of the Dodgers sent me a little handwritten note that he didn't think that was the proper way of getting in shape for spring training. And I went anyway. So what are you going to do?
If your players, especially, I mean, there's dietitians on staff now, something like that probably couldn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. Or it could happen, and then, you know, you get a couple minus points, but I don't think anybody would be dumb enough to do that these days. You know, I was just into competition, and if there was something to win, I wanted to win. Yeah.
So speaking of that, sort of, you wanted to be a major league manager. You were coaching in the minor leagues, and you decided you wanted to be a major league manager when you were done playing, and you were the youngest candidate around at the time. And from what I read, you called around, you called the Texas Rangers, you told them you were available, and you landed it. So what advice can you give to kids or people who are pursuing their dreams, their careers in sports, about just tenacity, and then also talk about the experience?
Wow, well, that's almost all correct too, Jess. But yeah, I had never managed in the minor leagues. I happened to I got through playing, and I got to be a coach at 30 years old in the minor leagues. And then when I was 31, I got to be the third base coach for the New York Mets. And then I stayed as the third base coach for 5 years until my teammate from the New York Mets, we were teammates in 1977. He retired in 1979. He went on to be a ticket manager and minor league manager, and then became the general manager of the Texas Rangers while I was a third base coach for the New York Mets. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I want you to interview for this job. I'm hiring a new manager." And I went to a Houston Hobby Airport, went into the hangar that was there. The owner and general manager and president of the team flew down from Dallas. I was coaching third base for the Mets against the Houston Astros. At nighttime, we had an interview, and they offered me the job. So that's how I got to be that job. And so what the advice is to those young people out there, and old people too, isn't necessarily to follow your dream. It's, I think, more follow what you're good at, and then be committed to it. I happen to be good at this baseball thing. I was good at playing it, and then I broke a leg, and I didn't play as well as I once played, but I was good at understanding it, and then I was good at teaching it, and then I was good at communicating it. So the thing that I was good at, I became passionate about, and that's why I'm still talking about baseball 50-something years later.
We've talked with Ed Blankmeyer on the show a couple weeks ago, and Billy Blitzer a little bit, just about how you have to, as an individual, assess yourself over the years. Billy figured out after a year or so playing with someone who went on to be in the major leagues, he wasn't going to cut it as a player. And Ed Blankmeyer talked about that. Not everybody's going to make the major leagues. He self-assessed. He was drafted, but after a year, he kind of realized, I should pivot, and got into coaching. So how can you talk about what that looks like? Because you've done it. You were a player, and at some point you said, maybe I can't do this anymore, but I can stay in the game I love. So can you just talk to that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I was advised to do that, actually. You know, I was hanging on to being a player, and I went back down and played for Tommy Lasorda again in the Dominican Republic when I was 26 or 7 years old. And I had first played for him when I was 18, 19, and 20 years old. And now I thought that I could still play as well as I once did. And I went down to play for him so that he could give me his honest appraisal of my talents. And he said that they weren't what they once were, and that I should start coaching. And I played another, I guess, 4 years as a bench player in the major leagues. But while I was playing, I was coaching and learning to coach, and hanging around the coaches more than I was hanging around the players, so that I could learn as much as I could. And again, I felt I was good at it, so I just gave it 24/7.
That's really, really good stuff. So we have a couple of audience questions. Christy Acker, she wants to know, what do you think will be the biggest challenge for managers if and when there's a shortened MLB season?
The pitching staff, and it was going to be a major challenge anyway this year, because you know, relievers were going to have to come in and face 3 batters, and that sounds simple, but that's a really tough thing to do when everyone out there hears that the game's all decided before the game, and the computer spits out what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Well, there's no computer spitting out when a pitcher comes in and pitches the three hitters and who the next pitcher is to follow. And a lot of things happen in three hitters. I dare say a lot of games are won and lost within three hitters in the middle or late in the game. So that was going to be their biggest challenge. And I think the way this season is shaping up, I think you're going to have more pitchers to deal with, especially when the season begins, because I don't think they're going to waste all the time of spring training, if you will, even though it'll be summer training, this preseason stuff that they usually spend getting starting pitchers in shape. I think it'll take a couple weeks for position players to be ready, and it'll take a couple weeks for pitchers to be ready to throw some innings, but they're not going to be able to throw a lot of innings. So you're going to need more pitchers in order to fill the entire game. So the pitching and the handling of pitching is always a challenge for a manager, and this year it will be an extreme challenge.
So another audience question on that point, George Wanaka, he said he interviewed Turk Wendell on his podcast, and Turk talked about how you always told him what his role was, and he knew what was expected of him. Do you think that communication, or that kind of communication, would work in today's game?
Yeah, I think it's exactly the way you have to communicate in today's game, and in every game. I mean, when people are going out to perform, when people are going to work, when people are going to try to make a difference in that day's event, they like to know what they're going to be asked to do. And if you could prepare people ahead of time. Now, I never said to Turk, hey, Turk, you're coming in the seventh inning and you're going to face this hitter, and that's going to be your only job, unless that hitter was Mark McGwire. And then it was, hey, Turk, you're going to come in, you're going to face Mark McGwire, and then we'll take it from there. Because for some amazing reason, and I guess it was because of Turk Wendell's slider, he was Mark McGwire's kryptonite. Mark, I don't know if he's ever advanced the ball forward against Turk, and every opportunity I had to match them up, I did.
And was that the same way with Randy Johnson and Joe McEwing?
It was very similar. Yeah, good for you. Yeah, Joe McEwing somehow had Randy's number, and he hit his slider, he hit his fastball. He hit the ball if it was up or if it's down, if it was in or it was out, and he usually hit it for extra base hits. It was an amazing competition. And when Big Mac was, of course, Mark McGwire, and Little Mac was Joe McEwing. And when Little Mac was facing the big unit, Little Mac won more often than not. It was pretty amazing.
So, and about Joe or Robin Ventura, you've got these guys. Mike Piazza managed Team Italy. We talked to John Franco last week. He was the pitching coach. We have a Yiddish word, kvelling. Do you ever, as a manager, you manage these guys, now they're managers, they're coaches, do you ever get excited or feel really happy to see that progression for them?
Oh, absolutely. And I get goosebumps when I hear Todd Pratt say that he's putting on the hit and run because he knew that it was a successful play when he was at bat. And Johnny is a terrific guy. Johnny's done so many things successfully in life. He'd be a great manager, by the way, and obviously has been a very, very good coach whenever he's been asked to coach. So I like there is some lineage there of people who played for me and also are now coaching and managing.
So another person that you had a relationship with was President George W. Bush when you were manager of the Texas Rangers. What was the relationship like at that point in time? And then how did it develop while he was president? Obviously, September 11th we'll get into, and then maybe after that.
Well, he was managing general partner of the Texas Rangers baseball team. there were about 18 partners that he put together to buy the team. And he was the hands-on guy. He was in my office every home game. Before the game, he was one of the greatest guys to go to lunch with, one of the greatest guys to have in your office with. But, he would jog, and now I guess he rides a bike because his knees got bad. But he was an everyday workout guy, and he usually used my office and my shower to freshen up after running a few hours in the hot Texas sun before the players got there. And he was just spectacular. He also fired me, and I was going through some old VCRs the other day, and I actually found the tape of that press conference.
Really?
Yeah, which is kind of cool to see him and the guy who hired me, Tom Green, my old teammate, sitting on a panel with the guy Tom Schieffer, who was the president of the team, and then Tom Schieffer, interestingly enough, when George W. was the president, Tom Schieffer was the ambassador in Japan while I was managing in Japan. So it all comes around.
It just keeps coming together.
Yeah. But I just got something in the mail today from George, where he's he's now an artist. He does some fabulous portraits and some still lifes. And I got some greeting cards from him that I'll use before long. Yeah, he's a real special guy.
We have a question here, Natsubake. You could probably say it better than I can. He says, I'm working in a Japanese junior high school now. Students don't play baseball at the moment. We've had some questions from kids, from coaches. What can they be doing? What's your favorite drill for them to do at home or for you while they're stuck in quarantine?
Yeah, baseball is not really an indoor sport, but what baseball in all sports require is concentration. It requires balance, and it requires rhythm. And earlier in the interview, we talked about dancing, and I think the greatest thing you can do is dance if you want to be an athlete, because you are teaching your feet and your body what to do in rhythm, and you're doing it in balance. And that translates onto the baseball field, translates anywhere. And if you ever do it with a partner, then that idea of teamwork also translates from the ballroom or the living room out into the sports world. But as far as what he could do in the living room, you always want to be able to grip the ball across the seam. So if you're sitting around and you have a baseball, you could just throw that baseball up in the air, and when you catch it, make sure that you're grabbing it across the seams. See, and you don't really catch it across the seams, but you'll catch it somewhere, and then you just have to rotate the ball in your hand so that you're holding it across the seams every time you throw it. You can do that. You can work on balance, and you can work on rhythm, and you can think about those really good plays that you made, the good swing that you took, the good double play that you turned, the good pitch that you threw right where you wanted to throw it. And if you see yourself doing that while you're waiting to perform, you'll probably perform better.
You were just talking about the idea of dancing. Did you ever do anything like that? We see Joe Madden will always change it up, do different exercises with the team. Did you ever do anything like that as manager?
Anything like have the guys dance?
Take dance lessons. I mean, he brings in a bear cub or a magician just to change up the feel. But did you ever do anything just to change it up in the clubhouse?
Yeah, that's what you do. Part of the job as a leader is to have people be comfortable with their routine, and then the other part is when they're comfortable with the routine, to make sure that the routine never gets dull and become commonplace. It's got to always be special in their life. So yeah, changing the music, bringing in dance girls, bringing in, giving total days off and making sure that everyone goes bowling. There's all that type of thing. I never did the costumes. Joe's terrific at the costumes, and his budget's a little more than mine ever was, and bringing in circus animals and the such. But it's what you have to do, and he's very good at what he does.
Billy Capola wants to know, who do you like as a manager today?
Yeah, actually, I liked a guy who is a real lucky guy, mainly because all this happened and the Houston Astros aren't the topic of conversation in baseball. And when baseball comes back, what happened with the Houston Astros and what happened with his team is not going to be a headline. So I think he does a really good job. I think, that Aaron Boone, who I got to, manage against and work with at ESPN, it does a very, very good job. I managed against his dad also, and also managed when his dad played. His dad was a terrific player. Didn't hit much, but was in the lineup because he was the captain on the field, the coach on the field. He was the catcher in the know. He had pickoff plays that were extraordinary. He had timing with Doug DeSense, who was his third baseman, and Bobby Grich, the second baseman, on pickoff plays from the catcher to the bases that were second to none. And he was taught and mentored by a guy who was one of the greatest managers to never be recognized as a great manager, and that guy's name was Gene Mock.
Jay Horowitz. This is Sean Clancy. He wants to know if you have a Jay Horowitz story.
Well, I talked to Jay this afternoon, and he hooked me up with Wally Backman so that I could do one of these with Wally and Ron Darling and Lee Mazzilli for my university coming up on my birthday, May 13th. So I have a million Jay Horowitz stories, but none of them are the funny type where a lot of people like try to make fun of Jay. Jay was he is and was an extraordinary person. He left his mark on the New York Mets because of his passion, but he left his mark on the community in New York because he really not only was the creator, but was also the executor of Tuesday's Children, which is a foundation that he started after 9/11 to take care of children who lost a loved one during 9/11. We had him out to the ballparks. We brought him in a dugout. We took pictures with him. And, in a lot of organizations, that's a one-time, two-time, or three-time thing. That was an every month, every year thing for 10 years with Jay Horowitz leading the charge. Jay's a spectacular human being.
I saw on Instagram someone that you formed a relationship with because of September 11th, a young man. I'm not sure what his name is, but you also did that. You followed up on your own. You went to graduations. You met his family. We could just jump in if you want and talk about what 9/11, John Franco talked about, what it was like getting put up in the mountains in Pittsburgh, not knowing exactly what was going to happen and the impact there, but then how you guys were able to bring the community up through being that first game back and through all of the stuff you're talking about right now.
Yeah, there was a lot to do, and there were great efforts. Johnny was, leader of the pack. It was his community. He took it very personally, and he was burdened by it. He was scarred by it, and he tried to heal as much as he could and heal others as much as he could, but it was really difficult. Yeah, you know, being put up in the country. We were downtown Pittsburgh when the planes hit the trade towers. Many of us were up watching the ESPN. I happened to be watching CNN, and I alerted Jay Horowitz and our traveling secretary, Charlie Samuels, and said, hey, you know, we might have to do something pretty quickly. And as I looked out the window, I realized that we were right across the street from the FBI headquarters in Pittsburgh. And what they were doing was they were blocking off all the entrances and exits to their parking garage, which was underneath the building. And they were blocking them off with their black sedans. And it was an ominous sight. And so I called Charlie and I said, Charlie, you know, we have to get out of here. You know, there was the plane then came down on the Pentagon, and then there was the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. And we didn't know the destination, unknown, and we felt that there were more sites, and maybe an FBI site was one of them. So somehow we got a bus driver to get our bus out in front of the hotel. We packed up. We went out, and I believe we stayed at a Holiday Inn right next to Robert Morris University, where my team, Sacred Heart, plays. And I went out for a game, and I'm almost sure I stayed at the same Holiday Inn when our team played out there. I had this deja vu, but it was that one night stand, and the next morning we were in a bus going back to New York, and probably the most ominous sight any of us ever saw was when we were on the Jersey side of the Hudson, and we were coming up 80, and we finally had Manhattan in our sights, looking across the Hudson, and we saw none of the skyscrapers. They were all covered in this black smoke that was still over Manhattan, and our bus went silent, and we took the bus ride from the George Washington Bridge basically to Shea Stadium in total silence. It was one of the most amazing 45 minutes of my life. Yeah.
What has stuck with you? Is there something where you flash back to it? Is it just different parts about that whole experience when you think about it now, or when you're talking about it now?
It was the entire experience. Yeah. And I can't put it into words because, you know, sometimes emotions aren't easily talked about, but totally. I know Matt Conroy's the kid that you're talking about, who's still my buddy, and he's a very successful young man now after graduating from Northeastern, where he was a star pitcher and the coach on his club baseball team that won the national championship. Huh?
You got that on ESPN. You got it in.
And I announced it up ESPN. That was another thing I found going through all my VCRs, and I think I put that out there on Twitter. And yeah, Maddie's a spectacular young man with his 3 younger sisters, and his mom just had a birthday. So thank God they're doing well, and thank God they came into my life, because they were a shining star in the dark cloud that was over me, and I think I brightened up their day once or twice too.
Your father-in-law was the late, great Ralph Branca. You talked a little bit at the dinner back in January about sign stealing, and I mean, he's someone whose life was totally altered by an example of that. You mentioned the Astros a little bit earlier. Can you just put into historical context maybe what was going on now for people?
Well, what was going on now was going on since 1951 for sure. Now, it might have been going on before 1951. I'm not sure. But we know it's documented that in 1951, using the IT electronic world of 1951, the Giants had a periscope from World War II that was in office right outside of the bullpen um, yeah, Giant Stadium, and I'm
The
not
polo.
the Polo Grounds. Thank you very much. And yeah, they were relaying the signs from there into the dugout with a buzzer system. And then they weren't banging any trash can, but they were somehow alerting the hitter to what pitch was coming. And they gained 14 and a half games from the, I guess, middle of August until the end of the season on the Dodgers. And wound up in a tie. And then there's a 3-game playoff. And then the third game of the playoff, Bobby Thompson hit a home run against Ralph Branca, and that's my father-in-law, who you already mentioned, and that was the shot heard round the world, which, interestingly enough, wasn't the shot heard round the world because it was only heard around the United States. But the reason it was called the shot heard round the world was because it was the first telecast game that went from coast to coast, that NBC had laid the line, the cable, to get a live telecast to go across the United States. They were going to have it for the 51 World Series because there was such great attention given to the 3-game Giant Dodger playoff series. They had that third game go across the country. Interestingly enough, in my lifetime, the shot heard round the world for me was the ball that Mike Piazza hit, because we were told before that game that George W. Bush really wanted us to play, and he thought that baseball could be a healing part of the process. And he also said that we had to put on our best faces because the bad guys watched our television over in Pakistan or Afghanistan or wherever they were, and we wanted to make sure that they didn't think that they got us down. So, you know, when Mike turned all those frowns upside down and the world got to see in eruption of emotion caused by the crack of the bat, I say that that was truly the shot heard round the world.
I'll go with that. I think that's a good outlook on that. So now I'm going to ask you some quick hitters, and you just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Favorite thing about Japanese baseball?
Oh, the fans are spectacular. They have a song for every player. They sing it the entire time. They never leave a game and until it's over, and they are truly fanatics, and hence the word fans.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Chocolate.
Who is your hero in sports growing up? You played different sports.
Mickey Mantle. Yeah.
Normal bedtime, and what time do you wake up in the morning?
I have no normalcy, but I always wake up at 6.
And then what's your favorite phrase or saying from over the years, or your own phrase or saying?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably you got to be shitting me, huh?
So you did very well on that. That was the hard part. So it's been tough for everybody. The world has changed a lot with the pandemic. Obviously, you've experienced some version of that, like we were just talking about, but this is different. It's its own thing. You're always giving back to the community. We've seen videos recently. You were giving out things to just help people. You always give of yourself to people in need. Why do you feel the need to do that? You're talking about the relationships you formed, right, with September 11th. Why do you want to give back?
I was brought up that way. You know, my dad was a carpenter. My mom was a secretary. They both worked every day of their life that they could. Yet they were always giving. You know, my dad was a carpenter. He made everyone's furniture for free. All the relatives, all the neighbors, anybody who needed anything repaired. That's what my dad did. My mom was always at the PTA, working at the church, making the pizza frite in the festivals, doing the things after school for free. I mean, we didn't have money to give away, but they had energy, time, wherewithal, and they were always giving. And that's all that I ever knew, and that's all that I'll ever know.
That's a beautiful thing. And what have been some of the best things that you've seen? This has obviously been tough, but what are some good things? We always like to ask, what are the good things you've seen, your favorite things that you've seen since you've been home or, with family?
Wow, here, I've seen a lot more of nature. I take a couple hours a day and walk with my dog, and we've seen the spring come upon us, and I've seen it up close and personal for the first time in a long time. I like that. I've seen, neighbors asking about each other. Everybody that I see asks if I'm all right, and if I need anything, and I ask if they're all right, if they need anything, and I think that's a real good thing. And how everybody's running to try to do the right thing. Those people who are paid to do that, are trained to do that, and our first responders, and our the people who are on the front line and in hospitals are incredible. And to see it firsthand here in Stanford a few times, and to see it on TV is heartwarming and also heartbreaking. And hopefully we'll figure out how to win at this game and be on with the next one.
Amen to that. So we got a couple of minutes left. The next segment, I show you some baseball cards, and you just tell me about the players. You managed a lot of Hall of Famers over the years, and great players, Willie McCovey, Don Drysdale. So here's Frank Robinson. What comes to mind?
Well, Frank and I were teammates on the Dodgers and on the Angels. Frank was one of the great hitters of all time, and what comes to mind is he almost always hit a home run his first time up without practice in spring training, and almost always hit a home run, it seemed, first time up in the season. He was a spectacular player.
The next one, Chipper Jones.
Yeah, Chipper made a living against my teams and got to the Hall of Fame because he did it against everyone, but he really was impossible for us to get out. Made great defensive plays against us, and without him, I think that the Braves' run would have been short-lived, and with him, it was insurmountable.
And he named his son Shea. Ricky Henderson.
Yeah, Ricky is probably the greatest player I ever got to manage. Greatest talent, for sure. When he played against me with Oakland and the Yankees, he was an absolute dominator. No one changed the game or stopped the game the way he did. When he played for me, regretfully, it was later in his career, and Ricky was still being Ricky, and we played. He helped us get to a World Series, so I tip my hat to him for that. But he was one of the greatest ever.
Jim Bunning.
Yeah, Jim Bunning became a friend after his playing days. Real intelligent guy with a good slider. I like everything Jim did during his career and after his career.
He became a senator, right? From Kentucky?
Became a senator from Kentucky, yeah.
Mike Piazza.
Yeah. Mike was able to rise to the occasion. He refused to lose, and anytime he did, he took defeat harder than anybody I know, and he strived for excellence with as much vigor as anybody I've ever met.
And then the last one here, we posted the story about when you met Nolan Ryan, but what's Nolan like as a person, as a player?
Well, Nolan, again, the special ones are special, and his work ethic was special. His competitive fluids were special. He had 7 no-hitters. He struck out 5,000 guys. He won 300 games, but more than that, he dominated about 70% of the games that he pitched. I remember Al Kaline coming to second base in one hitter that he pitched one time. I was playing shortstop. It was the first inning. Al got to second because of a walk and a wild pitch, and just said, if they don't make one of those two pitches of his illegal, he's going to throw a no-hitter today. He threw a one-hitter, and I think it was a bloop over second base. And, I think I managed 4 or 5 of his one-hitters. And, he's just head and shoulders above the rest that I ever had to manage, competitive-wise and stuff-wise. He was throwing 97 miles an hour when he was 97 years old. I mean, when he was 42 years old.
Unbelievable. All right, you did great at that too. A couple of audience questions, and then we'll get to the last one. If you weren't baseball, Bobby Valentine, what would you have become? I know you would have been a success at that, whatever it was. So,
yeah, most people said I would have been a lawyer. People who knew me, I think I would have been a teacher. I'm not sure, though.
Let's see. Another question we got a couple more here. This one I think is from Japan. Who is the player you're most impressed with now, today's game?
Well, there's a lot of really good players, but because he's from Japan, the guy I'm most impressed with is Otani. I've never seen a guy that was able to hit it 500 feet and throw it 100 miles an hour, and he's going to do it on a regular basis in the major leagues. And I'm waiting to see him have a couple full seasons.
What do you think about Shinjo's declaration of returning to professional baseball?
As I was getting onto this Instagram, Shinjo's Instagram popped up, which is amazing. He's a phenomenal athlete, a great entertainer. I think he could still play, but he wasn't an extraordinary hitter. He could really hit a fastball, and he did it really well for the New York Mets and other teams. And he could really shag a ball in center field and had as good an arm as anyone who's ever played out there. But coming back, I think he's 47. I think it's going to be difficult, but he'll entertain, that's for sure.
He was my favorite player. I had the orange wristbands. That was always his thing. Wow. He could entertain.
Large orange wristbands.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see, how often should one practice? So this is for players. How often should they practice?
Well, practice lets people know you've been practicing. And if you want to get better, you better practice. And remember that practice doesn't only build skill, it builds courage, it builds confidence. It builds that thing that you need to take in the competition with you.
Should a player play multiple positions? We've talked about this a little bit with other people, this idea of being versatile in today's game. What do you think about that?
Well, I think some players should play more than one position and some players can't. But if you can, it's more fun to learn to play more than one position, and you're definitely going to be able to help the team more if you can play more than one position.
Someone wants to know what your walk-up music would be if you were a player today.
Oh, probably Up on the Roof. Yeah. By Carole King, but made famous by the Drifters and the Temps. Yeah.
Let's see. One more audience question. I'm a baseball player with a bunch of talent, but I need scouts to come look at me. What would you suggest? How do people get seen by scouts?
This is for the New York Scouts, and they do a fabulous job of finding people, but it's getting harder and harder, and their budgets are getting less and less. So I really don't know. You have to play on good teams. You have to get to into a good program, whether it's AAU or college, and you got to get lucky, man. It's just as simple as that. You have to be not only in the right place at the right time, but you have to have the wind blowing out on that right day too. So unless you're a pitcher, then you have to have it blowing in.
I said last one, but we got one on Sacred Heart. So someone wants to know what you think of Sacred Heart hockey this year.
Well, just a spectacular year. We won the Connecticut Ice, which was a first-year battle between the 4 teams that play Division I hockey in Connecticut: Yale, Yukon, Quinnipiac, and Sacred Heart. We won 2 games and got the trophy there. We made the playoffs, never got to play in the playoffs because they were cut short. But it was by far the best season that our hockey team and Sacred Heart has ever had on the ice.
All right. So then the final question that we ask everybody, Bobby Valentine, what does baseball mean to you?
Well, just that it's been my life for 65 years that I played the game or watched the game or coached the game or managed the game. And it's killing me not to have the game to watch. They tell me there's some Korean games coming on ESPN. I think I'm going to try to get up and stay up to watch them.
Billy Blitzer says, great interview. Thanks, Bobby. You have the Billy Blitzer seal of approval. I think that's it. I think we said we were going to call this the Hot Stovers. Did you come up with a different title you like over the course of the show?
No, I haven't been creating names for shows right now, but you'll come up with a good one if you don't like what it is right now. Thanks for doing it, and I hope the New York Scouts benefit from it. Take care.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Have a great night.